Bonnie. Bonnie's blessed the church for decades through her piano playing here in this room. So we just thank Bonnie for her faithful service. If you would now stand for the reading of God's word, please. Hosea chapter 6, starting verse 1. Come, let us return to the Lord, for he has torn us, that he may heal us. He has struck us down, and he will bind us up. After 2 days he will revive us. On the third day he will raise us up, that we may live before him. Let us know. Let us press on to know the Lord. His going out is sure as the dawn. He will come to us as the showers, as the spring rains that water the earth. What shall I do with you, O Ephraim? What shall I do with you, O Judah? Your love is like a morning cloud, like the dew that goes early. Therefore I have honed them by the prophets. I have slain them by the words of my mouth, and my judgment goes forth as the light. For I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. The word of the Lord. You may be seated. Two of those words that we were reading up on the screen as Johnny was playing the piano. There is beautiful words, beautiful prayer of the heart, really. And I just think about as Thursday came and went, and how quickly it went. But it was just a day where we pressed pause. We're saying we're thankful for all that we have. I said last week as Christians, we ought to be the most thankful people in the world. Like nobody gets that on us. Like we should be so incredibly thankful for all that God has done because we've experienced the joy of salvation. And so we just operate differently than the rest of the world does. And so we're now moving into a different kind of season, right? We're moving into the Christmas season. And regardless of where you stand on the issue on this, I think we're all in agreement now that it's not a sin to listen to Christmas music, right? Thanksgiving's coming. I know the debate is November 1, so we're beyond that. We got the tree up. We're ready to celebrate Christmas. But I love that we do take a day and we pause and we think about all that God has given to us. And like Thursday was awesome. I woke up, I went to the Lions game, and I wasn't disappointed because I had proper expectations. Right? I was there, I'm watching them drive down the field, and you're thinking, certainly we just scored, we're going to win the game, and then our defense can't stop the ball on the other side, and long story. But I actually left at the last minute 45. I said, I know that we're not going to lose, but I want to get home to Mama to get some good food. And my sister-in-law, Kate, you guys have seen her, she leads up here and worship sometimes, and she got up and she made these things called chess pie. Anybody familiar with chess pie? It seems like it's not like a super common thing, but it's like a custard on the inside of the pie. That's the best way I can explain it. And then on the top, it's like a creme brulee kind of thing. Maybe that's a bad thing, but I loved it. It was fantastic. And I was driving home again as Christians. We got to be thankful better than anybody else. I said, I'm not letting my praise, my thankfulness for this pie terminate on the pie. But I'm driving home and I'm saying, thank you, Lord, for chess pie. And it's stirred my affections to worship God for that. But you know what's so ironic, and I'm sure we talk about this every year, but the irony of Thursday and Friday. Thursday, pause. Think about everything that you have and be thankful for it. And then Friday, you're being told, think about all that you don't have. Right? There's all the sales are going on. And hear me, if you're not content with what God has given you on Thursday, nothing you're going to be able to buy on Friday is going to satisfy you. Right? Because Friday, really, all it is telling you things you already have. Think about the Black Friday deal on clothes. Hey, we're marking them all down. Come in and you get, great designer clothes for this price. And it's like, well, clothes isn't going to do it for you. Clothes isn't going to make you content because guess what? You already have clothes. And I'm sure at one point or another there was clothes that you were wearing that you said, I'm excited to go out in public wearing this. Like, I'm going to walk into the restaurant and all eyes are going to be on me when I walk to the booth. And sometimes we think about that when we have a certain outfit. But let that outfit go a couple months. How excited are you to wear it again? You know, things come and go. Our excitement and thrills over these things that are being sold. And we're crying, hey, buy this. You don't have this. You need this. You don't really need it. I mean, TVs, phones, you know, all the electronics, they're just things you already have. They're just new. Right? You already have a phone. You already have a TV. And so we go and we, on Friday, are reminding ourselves of the things we don't have. And we think, and somehow we fall for this trick that we think that in getting them, that these things are going to provide some sort of soul-level pleasure and satisfaction. But really, no, it's just a fleeting pleasure. It's a momentary thing. And you can see that when you look at the things that you once prized. You know, every time I get my Dodge Avenger, it's 2012. Every time I get into it, you know, I get frustrated because it's on its last leg. But there was once a time where I thought, man, I'm rolling in style. You know, 4-cylinder, yeah. If you're in here on a regular basis, if you attend Phos regularly, you call us your home, you probably hear me get on materialism rants quite often. And I'm sure many of you are just beginning to think, man, this guy just must be the Grinch. Like, he must never have fun, his house must be empty. You know, he hates things, and that's just not true. So I'm going to put cards on the table, and this might be dangerous, but when you hear all of what I do have, you might not want to break in. But I got some nice stuff. I have the nice things. I've got 2 4K big plasma screen TVs in my house. Got some nice appliances. I got a great master bedroom. I'm a watch guy. I always, I love watches. I have some nice watches. I also have some nice guns, like I said. Don't come trying breaking in. But so I have some awesome things. God has blessed me in a lot of ways, and even beyond materialistic things, just in relationships and friendships and the job I have. I mean, you guys treat me well. So I'm a blessed man. Really blessed. But I'm sure I'm not the only one in here that could say that. I'm not sure I'm confident I'm not the only one that could say, hey, God has blessed us in areas of life, and it's awesome. But if you're a Christian in here, my encouragement to you is as we look at all the things that we can be thankful for, we are not blessed as Christians because we possess things. You're not blessed because of the things you possess if you're a Christian. You're blessed as a Christian because of who possesses you. Radically different things. But materialistic things can possess people. You see that in the story of the rich young ruler. Right? Go give all that you have. If you want to follow me, go give it all away. You can't give something you don't own. The money owned him. And so it was a very different relationship. And so, again, we're not a slave to the things of this world. We're owned by God himself. And so we're not a slave to the world. So what that means is you're not a slave to your job. It means you don't find your value or your identity in the thing that you do. As I read this message more like everything for that also means you're not a slave to fear. It means you're not a slave to fear. Because though the good gifts of God are great and such a blessing, how many of you know you can be fearful about the good gifts? If you don't have the proper relationship with it. I'm going to use money as a quick example because it's easy. Nobody doubts that money is a gift. Nobody's saying money is a bad thing. But if you're owned by money, if money possesses you, then you're never going to be free. You're never going to enjoy the good gift. Because you're going to be laying in bed wondering, I just need more of it. Or my neighbor down the street will have more. I want to get to that level. And there's going to be this race you're in, and you're not getting able to enjoy the good gift that God has actually given you to enjoy. And hear me, I'm not discounting hard work or ambition. That's not a bad thing. If you say, hey, I have goals, I have mindsets of what God might do through me, and yeah, that might bring around some financial gain, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying if that's the end all, if that's the thing you're chasing, I'm going to be happy when blank. You put a number there. If that's the goal, if that's the mindset, that owns you. You're working for that. But God has freed us up from that. And we have a relationship with God's gifts differently. We see them as temporary blessings to move us to worship. God's good gifts are temporary blessings given to us that might move us to worship. But again, if we don't have that proper relationship, if we view these gifts differently than what God intended to them, then they're not life-giving, they're soul-sucking. We're going to get onto this rat race of life, and we're running really, really hard. We're chasing after these things. But there will come a time when the realization comes in that there's not enough money to buy soul satisfaction. Because none of us are immune to just getting a call tomorrow that's going to wreck your world. Like in a moment, in a split second, you get a call, the diagnosis came in, the hospital foreclosed down, somebody passed away. In a moment, money doesn't matter at that point, right? You have all the money in the world, but your loved one's dying. Does it fix what's hurting? Does it fix what's broken, right? But if we view money differently, if we view it as just a temporary blessing, we don't need to have our souls crushed when the world comes crashing down. And yet, despite the examples we have in culture, the failed attempts that we can see throughout society and in the public eye, people who chase after and they got it and said it wasn't enough. I love this quote from Jim Carrey. I've used this before. He said this. Jim Carrey, the actor, liar, maybe you've heard of him. I wish everyone could become rich and famous so they would see it wasn't the answer to anything. I wish everyone could become rich and famous so they see it wasn't the answer to anything. Whether Jim acknowledges the truth of where that statement really comes from, he's tapping into an idea that's really from the foundation of the world true. From the foundation of the world, that statement that Jim shared is totally true. In Romans 1, Paul lays for us a theology. He says that creation, people have gone and they chased after things, and God gave them to their carnal desires. God gave them over. They wanted to worship the creation over the creator, and so what they do is they run out, and God says, go ahead, go get it, go chase it, go after it. And then in Romans 8, I love what Paul lays down. He says this in verse 20. He says, for God subjected creation, all of creation, to futility in hope. Why has God subjected the creation? Why is it that creation so often isn't satisfying? It's so that you would run after, as you would go out and you would chase and you would look for satisfaction, you would see it doesn't satisfy. That's why creation isn't as awesome as it could be. That we might run out and learn. I love that image, that thought of Paul giving to us. Creation, while beautiful, while amazing, while wonderful, people would desire to worship it. Paul said, go out. Go chase it. God's allowing you to go chase it. Only so, in hope, that you would return. God says, yeah, I'm all about you going to try and find love and satisfaction in other places, but I've designed it so that when you get there, it doesn't give you what you thought it would. I'm going to say something that could come off totally offensive, and please know my heart's in the right place. But when we think about why do people get in the rat race of life, why do people find themselves chasing after these things? Because we're sick. That's truly what it is. Why do people find themselves in the rat race of life? Because they're sick. Their soul is longing for something. Every single one of us, myself included, we have all longed for things. Our souls are thirsty. The psalmist David says, deer pants for water, so my soul pants for you. You know what he's saying? He said, my soul is thirsty. And only you can quench it. Only you can satisfy it. And so, yes, we have a world that's thirsty, and it's trying to find satisfaction. And it's running to a lot of different places. But I'm saying, as we see people chasing after the dollars, we see people chasing after sex and relationships and consumerism, shows that we're sick. And in fact, actually more than likely dead. Spiritually dead. I said sick because as Christians, we too can mix up our priorities. But again, this is from a soul, coming from a soul, chasing after things that's sick. And when I see this, it can be a tough thing to swallow. Nobody wants to actually believe that about themselves. Really, that's everybody else, but not me. Everybody else's soul is chasing the wrong things but mine. Right? But no, we can all, if we can just be honest, our souls are chasing after other things. But while I said that's hard to swallow, I'm not the originator of the thought. And I think something that could be an easier thing to swallow is that we have a culture that's messed up. We have a culture that's sick. I don't know anybody that's trying to deny that reality. The culture is just another word for people. Right? So the conglomerate of people are sick. We have a culture that's broken, a society that's flooded. Right? I mean, is anyone debating that? This week was looking at a CNN headline from back in 2006. I remembered the question, but I couldn't remember where it was from, and so I Googled it. But CNN had this headline. And literally what the headline said was, "Who can heal America?" 2016. You remember? You thought it was a pretty iconic headline. It was a beautiful picture of just people grabbing on, loving on each other. And as you think about that question, it came at one of the worst weeks in our nation's history. There was tons of racial tension and riots happening. And then within that same week, there was a few officers in Dallas that were executed. Right? And at that moment, nobody was questioning if our nation was in turmoil. Nobody was questioning whether our nation was divided. And the question was, who can heal America? And I think 5 years has transpired since that moment. And I don't know anybody who's really thinking that question needs to go away. I think there's a lot of people that still ask that question 5 years later. Who can heal America? Right? You turn on the evening news, if you keep up to date on current events, you would look at it out in the world and you think, man, this is really gloomy. You would think this is really gloomy. And then maybe for some of you, you look at the church and you think about church scandals and you hear about Christian leaders falling and you think, man, it's gloomy here too. And you're just saying, man, who's going to heal the nation? Who's going to heal this church? And we begin to ask that question. And I get angsty about this because the words I just hate. Again, Christians ought to be the most thankful people. We ought to be the most joyous people. And yet, oftentimes we see Christians walking around, hands in the pocket, doom and gloom, the world's going to hell, right? Like that's kind of the thought process. And we're the most devastated people because people don't prize our values, because people don't think about morality in the same way that we do, and people don't honor Jesus in the way that we often think that they should. And the moment we start getting devastated about that, the moment we start getting crushed, it's okay to be upset, it's okay to understand that things aren't right in the world. But man, we will never be hopeless people. Because, hey, CNN, I'm looking at the camera right now. CNN leaders, if you're watching this later on YouTube, which you're not going to, but if you were to, I've got an answer to your question. Who can heal America? Who can heal the church? Jesus can. And so, Christians, do not stand around waiting for somebody to come save the day. 2,000 years ago, someone came and did save the day. And so we're not waiting for a political leader to get in office. We're not waiting for the economic system to get right. We're not waiting for all that. We already know who came and saved the day. We already know we're all living hopeless. Right? Thank you. But I'm annoyed by that. When you see Christians walking around like this, I'm waiting for something to change. No, Jesus already came and he already did things. So let's be the people that stand in the gap. Let's be people who refuse to buy into the mundane brokenness of the world, but that we actually step in and say, hey, we actually know what can heal our nation. We know what can heal the soul of a person. Because we look at people that are hurting and that are broken, and do we actually believe that Jesus' love could interact with them in a real way and actually bring forth healing? We actually believe that Jesus could heal the wound of that parental pain or that abuse that you experienced or that job loss. Do we believe that Jesus could heal that pain? Maybe that feeling of your identity, feeling like you're worthless. We actually believe that Jesus could come alongside and show you that you have value, that you have purpose, that you have meaning. Do we believe that Jesus' love does that? Or do we not? And if we don't, I'm quitting. If we don't believe, I'm quitting, right? Like, we need to believe that Jesus' love is the answer to our world that's desperately in need of healing. And Christians ought never to be hopeless. That should be an oxymoron. A Christian hopeless. A hopeless Christian should never be in the same sentence. And so far we've looked at the book of Hosea. We've looked at a kind of love that has depth, that has breadth, that has meaning, that goes beyond contractual, but somebody that's covenantal that says, hey, I'm not going anywhere. Despite what comes, despite the hardship that happens, I am here and we're doing this. And that's kind of a love that's really freeing, that's really healing. To know that he loves us despite of what the things that we do. And maybe you sit here and you say, well, really? What if I do X, Y, or Z? Is God's love still going to be for me? Yes, his love is still going to be for you. Yes, his love is going to be. You can't put in a disqualifier for God's love if you've been received and you've experienced salvation. There's nothing then that can separate you from the love of God that's in Christ. A love that chases relentlessly. It's a love that spends extravagantly, but it's also a love that heals. So we're looking at the love of God in different areas. We looked at a love that chases, we looked at a love that suspends. Today we're looking at a love that heals. And so I'm going back to that rat race comment. And people find themselves in the rat race because they're sick, they aren't healthy. And again, know the difference. I'm not discouraging hard work or motivation. Surely, I'm not saying that. But when you begin to run and you realize that day came and it didn't give you what you wanted, that it didn't heal the pain and the hurt and the heartache that comes from chasing after your own way. Because, right, that's what we looked at. We looked back at Hosea chapter 2, right? And right after the vows, right after the pronouncement of marriage, they build the family, and then what happens? Gomer runs. She runs, and what God said was that the thorn bushes got put up on the sides of the path. So that, yes, you're free to run off of the path. You're free to go your own way. But don't think that running and going your own way is going to result in some pain or some hurt. Don't think it's not going to feel like running into a thorn bush, if you will. And so really those hurts, those hearts really are meant to, yes, push us back towards God. But as we do, as we saw last week, Hosea came and he purchased Gomer back. He spent extravagantly to get her back. But one of the things now is, okay, well, here we are. Wounds and all. And so here what we see is we see love interact with the people. Because Gomer's the nation. Gomer's the nation of Israel. See the people that are wounded, that are hurt from yes, running their own way, doing their own thing. And not only does the nation get brought back, but also gets healed and restored. That God's plan for love is to also heal and restore. And so we oftentimes in church will talk about how, yes, the love of Jesus can save you, but it's also the love of Jesus that heals you, that restores you. Right? Like Jesus isn't just the surgeon who's going to give you a new heart, but he's also the physical therapist that's going to get you to full health. Right? That's Romans, again. Can you tell I like the book of Romans? But those whom God justifies, God will sanctify. Those whom God sanctifies, he will glorify. God has not justified you and left it up for you to figure the rest of it out. But he's given us the promised Holy Spirit to come and heal us. And hear me, I want to be really crystal clear because I just know of hurts and pains that some of you have gone through recently in this room, whether it be loss of loved ones, whether it be financial, whether it be sickness, disease. I know there are those of you in here, and then you say, hey, I've experienced the hurts and the heartaches of life. Is that God punishing? I want to be really, really clear. I'm not saying that because you've experienced pain or you're going through a valley, that means it has something to do with your faithfulness. I'm not saying you got diagnosed because you did something wrong. Because pain can also just be part of the story. Pain can be on God's plan for your life, on the path. There can be bumps and there can be potholes along the way that trip you up, that hurt. So I'm not saying that every single pain that you experience is because of your lack of faithfulness. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that sin always hurts. There's never a time where sin doesn't hurt. But just because it's hurting doesn't mean it's because of your sin. Just because we live in a broken, sinful world that we experience things like pain. So I just want to make that quick disclaimer because I didn't know. Yes, some of the hurts, some of the hardest things, some of you are going through. But sin does always hurt. So we've been exploring the love of God, and we're now looking at how the love of God might come in and heal. At this time in Israel's history, right, they'll experience economic prosperity, political prosperity. Everywhere they look, things are going pretty well. They've had some leadership changes. But under King Jeroboam II, man, life is good. But they've started to experience the moral decay. Right? They began to neglect God. They began to neglect God, and yet now God's coming in. God's going to address their unfaithfulness. He's going to address their infidelity, running to love in other places. But as we look at God's love here in this passage, yes, you're going to see discipline. Yes, you're going to see judgment. Yes, you're going to see hurt. And you can know and you can believe and you can understand this as actually an act of love. That God's disciplines and judgments aren't a reactionary, mad at you, but it's actually that He's actually would be leading you towards life. And so, yes, this nation is running off and doing all these crazy things. We have an example of some of the things that the nations that got caught up in. Hosea chapter 4 says this. Hosea 4 verse 2. There is swearing, lying, murder, stealing, and committing adultery. They break all bounds, and bloodshed follows bloodshed. Therefore the land mourns. So the land has fallen, the land is hurting. Yes, despite the political and the economic prosperity, there's still all this turmoil in the world. But I thought all that stuff was supposed to bring peace and satisfaction. But clearly it didn't. They were booming as a nation, and yet they were collapsing from inside. Because the things that we see as booming weren't really providing for the people what they thought it would. And have you ever wondered how this happens to a nation? You ever wonder how a nation gets to the point of this kind of turmoil, this kind of sinfulness, this kind of decay of morality? You know, I think it's easy to begin to start looking at pop culture and politics and thinking, they're to blame. They're the problem. But I want you to see something in Hosea 4. If you're in your Bibles, if you would, just turn to Hosea 4, because we're going to see something really interesting here. How does the nation fall into this type of moral decay? Whose fault is this for happening? Look with me at this. In the midst of Israel's rebellion, look at who God points the finger at. Hosea chapter 4, verse 4. This is God. Yet let no one contend, and let no one accuse, for with you is my contention, O priest. What God just says to the nation, God just says to the spiritual leaders, He says, hey, don't start pointing the finger, don't start blame shifting right now. If you want to know, well, what's starting up with, the blame I'm picking right now is with you. Your spiritual leadership is walking. You want to know, man, you, O priest, is where my contention lies. God looks at their leadership, their spiritual leadership, and He's not looking at the kings or the presidents. He's not looking at the poets or the politicians. He's not looking at pop culture. The moral decay of a nation, He looks right at the spiritual leaders and says, I got a problem. I got a real problem with how you've been leading. You know, I don't always been the spiritual leaders, what they were doing, what they were lacking in. Look at me with verse 6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected me, I reject you from being a priest to me. And since you have forgotten the law of your God, I will also forget your children. Now, the word in the Hebrew, that word for knowledge, is huge. It's a huge word that you see in the Old Testament. It's the word yadah. The way Adam knew Eve. The way Adam yadah Eve. It was a personal, intimate knowing between the two. It says, because you've lacked this, because you've lacked this personal intimacy, this personal relationship with me, you don't know who I am. You act like we have a relationship, but you know nothing really about me. You don't spend time with me. You mix things up. It's this idea of the word yadah really is, I can tell you facts about athletes or politicians or actors or people that I don't know. But I can tell you things about my friends and my family that just ring deeper. Right? That's kind of the implication that's getting stated here. There was a lack of teaching of who God really is. There was a lack of spiritual leadership demonstrating what it was like to know God and make Him known. And when you look at a decay of a nation, and again, like I said, our nation, nobody's arguing that there's problems. Nobody's arguing that we're morally upright. But as I'm looking at this passage, I'm thinking about the moral decay, and I'm thinking, okay, who's that fault? How does the nation get like this? And I'm preparing the message, and I'm writing things, and I'm looking at this, and I think, I'm fearful. Personal. Because, yes, I look at a nation, and I begin to think, what is God thinking? Who is He looking at? He's not looking to the politicians, to the Hollywood actors and actresses. I truly believe that if we're taking implications from our text, God looks at our spiritual leadership in this nation. I have a problem with it. I have a problem with how does society get this way? Because the church doesn't have a voice about who God is. You know, and so I'm fearful that would we never get to that place? Would this be a church where people come and they know the name of Jesus, they see real relationship happening here in the life of our church? Right? That we haven't sugarcoated or we haven't made church about something that it really isn't? Yeah, because the church is the hope of the world. And hear me, I'm not saying don't be a political activist. Get involved. That can be a great route for you. Get involved in the game. We need Christian legislation. I want Christian legislation. Because I believe Christian morality, I believe the more that we see in society, more we see drivers pushing back. And so, yes, do I want to see that? Absolutely. But I'm not putting my chips there. Again, like what I said earlier, we're not waiting around for somebody to come save the day. We've been given the opportunity today to step in the gap and be the church, the ambassadors of Jesus, tell people about the hope of the world. And so, yes, our hope does not lie in Lansing. It doesn't lie in Washington. It's planted at Calvary. That's where our hope is. I'm not waiting around for that. But again, there's no bad things to get involved in. So don't hear me say, but I'm saying you as a Christian in the place that you are today, where you live, where you work, where you play, be an ambassador. Tell people about the hope of Jesus. Because that's going to be what transforms hearts. Jesus. Only Jesus can heal the brokenhearted. Most of Christian scholarship would agree that the last great awakening that our nation has experienced here, probably in the late 60s, early 70s, depending on when you want to draw the line on that. But have you ever realized that the nation, and some of you who grew up and you are alive and active in this time, that you can speak to this way better than I could. I can just read a book. But the country wasn't in the greatest of shapes. In the 60s, right? You still had racial tension. You had riots all around the country. You had this Hong Kong flu that killed millions of people. You had the Vietnam War. And so you can look back at that time and think, this is crazy, this is madness. Right? And what spurred out of that? What came about into that? Revival. In the 70s, you saw hundreds of thousands of millions of people professing faith in Jesus for the first time. And so I'm just saying, as a church, let's stand in the gap. Yeah, the world is going now, but what are we going to do about it? Are we going to stand in the gap? Are we going to point, the other direction and say, no, there's hope, there's life, there's meaning, there's purpose, and it's Jesus? Or are we just going to stand around and say, who can heal? I don't know. It's gloomy out there. It is. But Jesus has given you opportunity today. And yeah, maybe you're in here and you began to think, not corporately, but personally, because of some of the things that are going on in your life, you say, hey, my hope is going away personally. Things that are happening in my life, family dynamics are hurting, finances are hurting, my health is hurting, and you have all these different areas, and your hope is dwindling, and you begin to think, hey, is there hope, and we can hope be had? Yes. Yes. But you need to place your hope in a place that's outside this world. It needs to be in Jesus, where it can be protected, it can be secured, and know that God's love really can heal your broken heart. And we can see that all throughout history. We can see that all throughout church history. We can see God moving and intervening and healing and restoring. And as I see that in the scriptures, I stand here and I think, God, would you do it again? Would you do it again? Would you do a work among us? And we wouldn't believe even if we were told. That's what he says to the prophet Habakkuk. And yet he tells Habakkuk anyways. What are you going to do? And Habakkuk still doesn't believe it. But God, what do you do something? Even if we wouldn't believe it, we want to partner in what you're doing in the world. I want us to see love interacting with the sick nation. Let's look at Hosea chapter 6, verse 1. Come, let us return to the Lord, for he has torn us, that he may heal us. He has struck us down, and he will bind us up. How sweet is that first word, come. Come. In this nation that's in utter turmoil, and the invitation then is to come. Because who knows what that nation's thinking, hey, yes, we have gotten ourselves into a mess. We have gotten into a really unhealthy place. Which surely God wouldn't let us come back. Surely we wouldn't be loved and accepted and welcomed. It's totally not true. Come. Return to the Lord. In the New Testament, we get a face to that invitation in Jesus in Matthew 11. Come to me, all who are weary, and I will give you rest. And so in a moment when you begin to think, hey, life is too hard, life is too broken, I'm too sick, would God ever allow me to come to him with my pain and my hurts? I look at the invitation, I don't see one prerequisite. Come to me, all who are what? Weary. What's the prerequisite to coming to Jesus? Being weary. And what is his promise? I will give you rest. The thing that you're fighting about, the thing that you're broken over, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix what's broken. Jesus is that promise. We see in this verse, he has torn us. Am I the only one that's ever felt torn by Jesus here? Am I the only one that's ever said, yeah, life hurts? Life feels unfair right now. I wouldn't have asked for this. God, why would you do this? You've been there. I've been there. And then, again, this goes back to we are sick as a people, that we need to be healed, that we need to be restored. And the crazy part of all this is that, yes, we would rather actually have God become more like us. That God would move the chess pieces as we would like the chess pieces. But he even rebukes the nation for this. In Psalm 51, he says, one of the biggest problems that you have is that you thought I was just like you. God is different than us. He's more transcendent, more glorious, more beautiful, more, he's in control. And yet we want to move the pieces as we deem them. And no, God's just not that way. And so, yes, we see God here in this moment, caring so that he might heal. Yeah, the nation was going to go through a time where their prosperity was going to be removed, where things were going to be taken from them. And in a moment where that's happening, when things are slipping out of the fingers and they're saying, no, don't take from us. He takes so that he might heal. He takes so that he might give. But as people, we have a hard time seeing that way, right? Like as a kid doesn't understand a parent's love through discipline or withholding. Like as a kid, you just think, hey, no, this is great for me. Give this to me. It's like, no, this is why you can't have ice cream at 9 o'clock. It's a bad idea. We're not making this a habit. Right? As a kid, you don't understand that because it's a good thing. Why? You're taking enjoyment from me. If God is taken from me, any area of your life, he takes so he might give. He cares so that he might heal. And we see that happening in verse 1. Hosea grabs a hold of that truth. He sees it. He prays it. I'm not a fortune teller. I guess you guys saw me interpreting a dream last week, so maybe you think that that's an every week thing. I'm not a fortune teller. I can't see into the future. I've never time traveled. I don't know what God has in store for our nation. I don't know what God has in store for your life. But I can imagine, I've never been shot by a gun before, but I can imagine that being shot by a gun would hurt really bad. No matter the gun. I don't want to get shot with by an airsoft gun. Like, seriously. I don't want to inflict that kind of pain on myself. But that's not the kind of pain, that's not the kind of tearing that God does. That tearing to destroy you. It's more of, like I said, I haven't been shot by a gun, but I have gone through a surgery that had major complications for 6 hours, and the pain that came from that was so real. The pain that came from that surgery was so incredibly real, and I never want to experience it again, but it was healing. That pain was healing. And so, yes, that's the kind of caring, that's the kind of pain as Christians we experience. If God is conflicting or taking from you and it hurts, know that it might heal. And we know this all sounds great. We know that we're invited to come and experience this kind of healing. But how? Where? Verse 4. Or verse 3. Let us press on to know the Lord. It is going out as sure as the dawn. He will come to us as the showers, as the spring rains that water the earth. Again, we know the downfall of the nation. We saw that in Hosea 4. They rejected the knowledge of God. And so the reverse or the opposite end of that is just knowing God. What's a cure? How can this be fixed? Knowing God, turning back to the Lord and knowing Him. Because they mixed up what it really meant to know God. I look at this, verse 4. What shall I do with you, O Ephraim? What shall I do with you, O Judah? Your love is like a morning cloud, like the dew that goes early away. It wasn't that there was no faithfulness in the nation, ever. It's just that it went away quickly. Right? He says that, right? Your love is like a morning cloud, like the dew that goes away early. It's just that whatever faithfulness there was quickly dissipated like the dew of the earth. So verse 6 is the key verse in Phos, one of my favorite verses in all of Scripture. But here, God says exactly what got twisted. For I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. At this time, the people of God were still bringing forth burnt offerings. They were still bringing sacrifices to the temple. I look at this in Hosea chapter 5, verse 6. With those flocks and herds, they said, go to seek the Lord, but they will not find him. He has withdrawn himself from them. Israel brought animal sacrifice, right? They were showing up to the temple, but God wasn't going to meet them there. God wasn't going to meet them there. Right? He's withdrawn himself. What he's saying is their worship was empty because they didn't understand the worship that needed to take place. You see, They brought animal sacrifices, but they never brought themselves as a living sacrifice. But they never brought themselves to the temple, fully giving themselves to the Lord. They missed what God really wanted was a deep, close relationship with Him. But I just wonder, how do we get it twisted? We're in here, and we think that as long as I come on a Sunday morning and give an hour and a half of my time to listen to some music and listen to a message and check that box off. Or, I go and, I give some money after the Lions game to the guy with the cup, You begin to start setting yourselves check marks and just thinking, okay, I just have to do this, I just have to do this, I just have to do this. But you're never in relationship with the Lord. It's just things that you're doing that you can do apart from the Lord. Because I'm not interested. I desire steadfast love. I want the real thing. I want your heart. Despite what you could give. And here we see God make it very clear. I'm not about this Holy Ghost language if your heart's not really there. You talk as a Christian, present yourself as a Christian, but if your heart isn't there, if it's not surrendered to the King of the universe, King Jesus, then all this exterior nonsense doesn't mean anything. I'm not interested in that. I want surrender. He's after our hearts, and there's healing that can be found there. I just think about if we really came to the Lord, and yet we said, this is everything that I've done, and we love this anyway. Despite that, I think about that moment when Hosea buys Gomer back. The fact that he could say, I know all that's gone on, I know all that's transpired, and my love is still for you. How healing would that be? Not feel like you have to hide the guilt and shame past things that have happened. But you can stand boldly, confidently before the groom, knowing that he loves you, fully despite everything. So, my hope is to find